Barış and Elçin, the story they never told. What started as a seemingly perfect love story between two of Turkey's most beloved television stars would eventually unravel into one of the most heartbreaking and controversial breakups the entertainment industry had ever witnessed. Barış Arduç and Elçin Sengu weren't just co-stars. They weren't just friends. For millions of fans across the world, they represented something deeper, something real, something that felt like destiny. But behind the smiles, the chemistry, and the endless speculation, there was a story neither of them ever fully told. A story filled with silence, distance, missed opportunities, and heartbreak that still echoes today. This is the untold story of Barış and Elçin, the relationship that never was, and the love that millions believed in but never came to be. Let's go back to where it all started. Back to a time when Turkish television was about to witness one of the most electric on-screen partnerships in its history. The year was 2015, and a new romantic comedy series was about to premiere on Star TV. The show was called Caralic Ask, which translates to Love for Rent. The premise was simple but charming. A young, broke woman named Defne agrees to fake a relationship with a wealthy businessman named Omer to help him avoid an arranged marriage. What starts as a business arrangement slowly turns into real, undeniable love. The role of Defne went to Elçin Sengu, a rising star known for her radiant beauty, natural charm, and effortless screen presence. Elçin had already built a loyal fan base, but this role was about to catapult her into superstardom. Opposite her was Barış Arduç, a talented actor with piercing eyes, undeniable charisma, and a quiet intensity that made every scene feel deeper than it was written. Barış had been steadily climbing the ladder of fame, but Caralic Ask was about to change everything for him too. From the very first episode, something felt different. The chemistry between Barış and Elçin wasn't just good. It was magnetic. It was the kind of chemistry that couldn't be faked, couldn't be scripted, and couldn't be ignored. Fans immediately noticed it. The way they looked at each other. The way their laughter felt genuine. The way even the smallest gestures between them carried weight. It didn't take long for viewers to start questioning whether what they were seeing on screen was just acting or something much more real. Social media exploded with theories, fan edits, and endless discussions. Hashtags trended every week. Fan pages dedicated entirely to Barış and Elçin grew by the thousands. The show became a cultural phenomenon, not just in Turkey but across the Middle East, South America, and parts of Europe. And at the center of it all were two people who seemed destined to be together, both on screen and off. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because while millions of fans were convinced that Barış and Elçin were secretly in love, the two stars themselves remained frustratingly silent. In interviews, they were polite, professional, and careful. They praised each other's talent. They talked about their friendship. They laughed off the dating rumors with rehearsed answers that never quite satisfied anyone. Elçin would say they were just close friends. Barış would smile and redirect the conversation. And yet, the more they denied it, the more people believed there was something they weren't saying. Behind the scenes, things were far more complex than anyone realized. According to people who worked on the set of Caralic Ask, Barış and Elçin did share a unique bond. They spent long hours together filming. They supported each other through the pressures of sudden fame. They confided in each other during stressful moments. But there was always a line that neither of them seemed willing to cross. A hesitation. A distance that felt intentional. Some crew members described it as a friendship built on deep respect and unspoken understanding. Others saw it as something more painful, a connection that could have been love, but was held back by fear, timing, or circumstances no one fully understood. As the show continued to dominate ratings and capture hearts, the pressure on Barış and Elçin only grew. Fans weren't just invested in Defne and Omer anymore. They were invested in Barış and Elçin as real people. Every public appearance was analyzed. Every photo was dissected. Every glance, every touch, every smile was documented and debated online. The line between fiction and reality blurred so completely that even the stars themselves seemed caught in the middle of it. And then, just as the show was reaching its peak, cracks began to form. Small signs that something wasn't right. Fans started noticing that Barış and Elçin were appearing together less frequently outside of work. Their social media interactions, once playful and warm, became sparse. In interviews, their answers grew more distant, more carefully constructed. The warmth that once radiated between them seemed to cool. And no one could figure out why. When Caralic Ask finally ended in 2017 after 2 successful seasons, fans were devastated to see Defne and Ömer's story conclude. But they held on to hope that Barış and Elçin's story was just beginning. Surely, now that the show was over, they would finally admit what everyone already believed. Surely, they would step out of the shadows of their characters and into the light as a real couple. But that's not what happened. Instead, Barış and Elçin went their separate ways. Professionally, personally, completely. The silence that followed was deafening. Fans were confused, heartbroken, and desperate for answers. What had happened? Why weren't they together? Had they ever been together? Was it all just an illusion? The questions piled up, but the answers never came. Barış moved on to new projects. Elçin did the same. They stopped appearing in the same spaces. They stopped talking about each other in interviews. It was as if they were actively avoiding any mention of what they once shared, even if it was just friendship. But the story doesn't end there. Because while Barış and Elçin were trying to move forward, the world around them refused to let go. Fans continued to ship them. Edit videos of their best moments. Rewatch old interviews searching for clues. The obsession didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. Because the less Barış and Elçin said, the more people wanted to know. The silence became its own kind of story. A story of what could have been. A story of missed chances. A story that hurt because it felt so close to real. Then came the relationships that shattered hearts all over again. Barış Arduç began dating Gupsozi, a successful actress, comedian, and screenwriter. Their relationship was public, affectionate, and eventually led to marriage in 2020. Fans were devastated. Not because they didn't want Barış to be happy, but because it confirmed what they had been dreading. He had moved on. And it wasn't with Elçin. Elçin, on the other hand, remained more private about her personal life. Rumors swirled about potential relationships, but she rarely confirmed anything publicly. She focused on her career, her health, her personal growth. But the question always lingered in the background. Did she ever have feelings for Barış? Did she ever regret not taking that chance? Years passed, but the fascination never died. In 2022, something unexpected happened that reignited the entire conversation. During a live interview, a host asked Barış Arduç about his time on Caralic Ask and his relationship with Elçin Sangu. It was a question he had been asked 1,000 times before. But this time, his response was different. He paused. He smiled, but it wasn't the usual deflective smile. It was softer, more reflective. He said that Elçin was an incredibly special person. That working with her had been one of the most meaningful experiences of his career. That some connections are hard to put into words. It was a small moment. A few sentences. But for fans, it was everything. Because in that pause, in that tone, there was something unspoken. Something that felt like regret. Or nostalgia. Or maybe just the acknowledgement of something that once existed but was never fully realized. Around the same time, Elçin gave an interview where she was asked about her most memorable on-screen partnership. Without hesitation, she mentioned Barış. She spoke about how natural everything felt with him. How easy it was to connect. How rare that kind of chemistry is. She didn't say anything explicitly romantic. But the way she spoke, the softness in her voice, the way she seemed to choose her words carefully, it all felt heavy with meaning. Fans dissected both interviews endlessly. They compared timelines. They analyzed body language. They theorized about what was said and what wasn't. And once again, the same questions resurfaced. What really happened between Barış and Elçin? Was there ever a moment where they could have been more? Did they ever try? Did fear, timing, or external pressure keep them apart? Or was it all just a beautiful fantasy created by fans who wanted to believe in something magical? The truth is, we may never know the full story. Barış and Elçin have both moved forward with their lives. Barış is happily married and recently became a father. Elçin continues to thrive in her career and personal journey. They are both in different places now, both physically and emotionally. But the story of what they shared, whether it was love, friendship, or something in between, continues to captivate people. Because at its core, this isn't just a story about two actors. It's a story about connection. About the kind of chemistry that can't be manufactured. About the what-ifs that haunt us. About the relationships that never quite happen, but leave a mark anyway. It's about the pain of watching two people who seemed perfect for each other choose different paths. And it's about the way we, as observers, project our own hopes, dreams, and heartbreaks onto the lives of people we've never met. There are some who believe that Barış and Elçin did have feelings for each other, but the timing was never right. That the pressure of fame, the intensity of fan expectations, and the fear of ruining something special kept them from ever taking that leap. Others believe they were always just friends, and the chemistry we saw was purely professional brilliance. And some think there was a moment, a brief window, where something could have happened, but it passed, and neither of them reached for it. What makes this story so enduring is that it exists in the space between certainty and mystery. It's a story told mostly through glances, pauses, and the things that were never said. It's a story that lives in fan edits, old interviews, and the collective memory of millions who witnessed something rare, even if they couldn't name it. The impact of Barış and Elçin's partnership goes beyond just shipping culture or fan obsession. It speaks to something universal. The experience of watching two people connect in a way that feels real, raw, and unrepeatable. The ache of seeing potential unfulfilled. The bittersweet beauty of a story that didn't end the way we hoped, but still meant something. In Turkish pop culture, Barış and Elçin remain iconic. Caralic Ask is still watched and rewatched by new generations of fans. Clips from the show still go viral. Their names are still mentioned together, even years after they last worked side by side. The legacy of what they created together, intentionally or not, is undeniable. But beyond the fame and the fan theories, there's a human story here. Two people who were thrust into an extraordinary situation. Who created something magical together. Who handled intense scrutiny with grace. And who, for reasons only they fully understand, chose not to pursue whatever might have existed between them. Maybe that's the most painful part. Not that they didn't end up together, but that we'll never know if they wanted to. We'll never know if there were late-night conversations where feelings were almost confessed. We'll never know if there were moments of hesitation, of what if. We'll never know if they look back now and wonder what might have been, or if they're at peace with the choices they made. What we do know is this. Barış Arduç and Elçin Senga gave us a love story that felt real, even if it only existed on screen. They gave us characters we believed in and a connection that transcended the script. They gave us hope, heartbreak, and a story we're still talking about years later. And whether they meant to or not, they became a symbol of the kind of love that almost was. In the end, maybe the story of Barış and Elçin isn't about what happened. Maybe it's about what we felt watching them. The way they made us believe in chemistry, in timing, in fate. The way they reminded us that some connections are undeniable, even when they don't lead where we hoped. The way they showed us that not every love story gets a happy ending, but that doesn't make it any less real. There's a certain tragedy in loving the idea of two people together more than they love the idea themselves. But there's also beauty in it, because it means we saw something worth believing in, something worth hoping for, something that mattered, even if it was never meant to be. Today, Barış and Elçin live separate lives. They've both found success, happiness, and peace in their own ways. They've moved on from the roles that brought them together and the speculation that followed. But for the millions of fans who still remember, who still rewatch, who still wonder, the story of Barış and Elçin will always feel unfinished. Because some stories don't end. They just fade into memory, into nostalgia, into the quiet ache of what might have been. And maybe that's where this story was always meant to live. Not in headlines or confirmations, but in the space between what was real and what we wanted to be real. In the glances that said everything and nothing. In the silence that spoke louder than words ever could. Barış and Elçin may never tell their full story. They may never confirm or deny what millions of people believe they saw. And perhaps that's okay, because the story was never really theirs alone. It belonged to everyone who watched, who hoped, who believed. It belonged to the idea that sometimes two people can create something so powerful that it transcends reality, that it becomes a story worth telling, even if it's a story that never fully happened. So what's the truth about Barış and Elçin? Were they ever in love? Did they ever have a chance? The answer is complicated, frustrating, human. It's buried somewhere in the past, in private moments we'll never see, in conversations we'll never hear. It's locked away in the hearts of two people who may never speak it aloud. But maybe the truth doesn't matter as much as the feeling, the way they made us feel. The way they reminded us that connection is rare, that chemistry is magic, and that some stories are beautiful precisely because they remain unfinished. Maybe the real story of Barış and Elçin isn't about romance or missed chances. Maybe it's about the way we all long for something extraordinary, the way we see ourselves in their story, the way we hold on to hope, even when reality tells us to let go. And that's the story they never told. Not because it didn't exist, but because it was too fragile, too precious, too complicated to put into words. It was a story written in glances and silence, in chemistry that couldn't be faked and distance that couldn't be explained, in the space between what was and what could have been. For a partnership that captivated millions and created a legacy that still endures, the story of Barış and Elçin remains one of the most heartbreaking, beautiful, and unresolved chapters in modern Turkish television. And perhaps, in the end, that's exactly what makes it unforgettable.